Okay, great. Hey, Dave, thanks for joining us today. I'm super excited to kind of meet with you to kind of learn a little bit more about your from military to millionaire group. I thought maybe we can just start by an introduction. If you want to do a quick introduction, and I can do it myself as well, just for our audience, just to get to know you a little bit better and your background.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And first off, I'm going to apologize for being a hot mess. And I left my quality recording camera at the house this morning because I took it home, which I never do. So if you're dealing with all the wires and you're getting to see behind the scenes with all the lights and stuff that normally aren't unframed. So yeah, I spent 13 years active duty in the Marine Corps. In 2015, I got into real estate from a book, and I bought a duplex. I lived in one half, I rented the other, and then I kind of was hooked on real estate. In 2018, I started just documenting online what I was learning. So the blog originally started as like, hey, I'm learning about this thing. Let me write a really poorly written article and hope it eventually gets to where I know how to write. And you fast forward 2021, I left the military with financial freedom, and I was, I haven't had to have a job yet. I've been out now for just shy of a year, and I'm paying more in payroll than I was earning in the Marine Corps. Own about 100 rental units, invested in another 800 or 900 as a GP and a syndications, and to help service members and vets learn about real estate and, amongst other things, TSP and whatever else.
Yeah, that's great. It's really good to hear, especially in your initial investment, how you house hacked and got started that way. I think a lot of people can learn from that because not everyone is fortunate enough to kind of scale initially. And so that's really good to hear. I think just a quick introduction for myself. My name is Rayne Woo. I'm a realtor at National Realty, and we service Northern Virginia. And I think we're really fortunate because there's a lot of military here in Northern Virginia. I heard recently there's 48 bases in Northern Virginia and over 1 million active duty and reserve here. So it probably explains why that when I go cycling or when I go running, it seems like every, 3 to 5 person that I meet is in the military or was in the military. So there's a lot of people here. So I think it's really an honor for me to help service a lot of the military personnel that are PCSing from one base to another. And that's what really got me super excited to really focus on servicing military members that are coming to Northern Virginia. Even though there are a lot of, I think, military personnel here, not all realtors are familiar with VA loans. Not all realtors have experience and kind of understand some of the challenges of people that are moving from place to place or being deployed. And it's definitely, I think, it's good to have someone that has a network of people like loan officers that have worked with veterans and can kind of walk them through that process. So that's a quick introduction for myself. I mean, I started in real estate actually in 2001 in Boston. So I did real estate, not focused on the military back then, but I was really young back then. I started Boston Realty Advisors with a classmate from Babson College after I finished business school. And then years later, I started Global Bridge Realty because I wanted to focus on relocation customers that were coming to Boston, a lot of international buyers back then. And similar to you in terms of my real estate journey, I definitely caught the real estate bug back then and was fortunate to meet some people that helped me learn how to do real estate to invest. Back then, we were buying 3 families and converting them into condos. And I had met someone that used to run a bank in Boston, and her husband was an attorney. So it was me and an architect that we worked together to find the properties. They provided most of the funds, or paying all cash. And then they had within their network a construction company that helped us do a lot of the renovations. So I didn't realize at the time, but it was really a dream team, I think, that was formed back then. And I think that's where I learned a lot from that group and doing a lot of kind of real estate acquisitions and converting them into condos. So took some time off from real estate, went to Singapore, kind of worked at different places in product management, product consulting, and have kind of come back into the real estate business in Northern Virginia and trying to, focus on a niche. And so I'm super excited about that here. So that's a quick introduction in terms of my background. And then in terms of the military, I think this is something that's not well known. My grandfather actually served in the military. He grew up in Augusta, Georgia, and he was actually recruited by I think back then, Chiang Kai-shek and his wife, they were recruiting a lot of Chinese Americans to fight in the war in China against the Japanese. So my grandfather, I'm still trying to get more details. I've always heard that he fought with the Flying Tigers with General Chenault and that group.
Yeah.
But more recently, I've actually heard that he was a part of a group that was a liaison to General Chenault and the Flying Tigers because he spoke perfect English, probably with a Southern drawl, having grown up in Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah.
So that's been my connection. And obviously my dad, I think, he's always, even now, he's starting to learn how to fly. He's always wanted us to be in the Air Force Academy. And fortunately, I don't have perfect vision. I know they can probably fix that nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a PRK.
That's right. Yeah, that was something that I think my dad always wanted for us, even though we didn't join the military. I just feel like it's a great way to see the world, to kind of learn how to be disciplined and to kind of work in a team. So I definitely have a lot of respect for a lot of the military people that I've met around here. So with that being said, I wanted to transition the conversation, Dave. I know that you have this From Military to Millionaires group. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, and then just about some common questions that people are posting about the PCS process or about getting a VA loan and so forth.
Yeah, the Military Millionaire community is just there to, facilitate information, help service members and vets learn how to build wealth with, real estate, entrepreneurship, personal finance, whatever that may be. Personally, my favorite ways to do that all pretty much revolve around the TSP or the VA loan. And, the thrift savings plan, that's pretty cut and dry. Put a bunch of money in it, put it in the right fund and let it ride. The VA loan is not nearly as cut and dry because there's a lot of misconceptions that are propagated, either due to information that has changed over the years, or what I have found, unfortunately, is that unless you live around a base, you don't do a whole lot of VA loans as an agent or lender, right?
Right.
And so you don't necessarily need to be an expert. And so a VA or a lender or agent who might do one VA loan or two a year isn't going to know all of the things. And it's way easier to just regurgitate reasons that the VA loan is bad than it is to actually learn how to utilize the VA loan. So I always tell people, I won't even say jokingly because I'm dead serious about it. Like if you have an agent or lender who's telling you, oh, the VA loan won't work in this market, get a new agent or lender, because it's not the VA loan. It's their knowledge base. It's not that they're trying to steer you wrong or anything wrong with them. It's just they're clearly not familiar with that product, because I've seen that thing work in every market in the country for the last 4 or 5 years. And, when I've got an E5 buying a $1.2 million fourplex zero down in San Diego in 2021 mid-pandemic, you're going to tell me it's not a competitive loan product? Like, you don't get much more competitive than that space. So
yeah, exactly. Maybe you can comment, I know there's a common misunderstanding that VA loans are more complicated. It takes longer to close. There's obviously a lot of benefits for a veteran using a VA loan in terms of up to 0% down, or depending on their disabilities, not having to kind of pay into the VA funding fund. Yeah. But you can comment on that in terms of, how, from your experience, how is a VA loan different than a conventional loan? Because a lot of people think, realtors that I've talked to, they just think it's more complicated and it's not going to close.
No, yeah. So the VA loan's better than any other mortgage product out there, and I will argue that with anyone. And whether they admit I won or not, I'm pretty firm on that belief. And I'll just say it this way, right? The funny thing is, people will say, "Oh, don't use the VA loan; it's complicated," and then talk you into using the FHA loan, which is much more restrictive than the VA loan. For prime example, with FHA, or let's say 5% get down conventional, 49% is the highest you can go on debt to income. There is no debt to income limit on the VA loan. I've seen a 78% debt to income close. There's no minimum credit score. I've seen a 500 credit score buy a house with the VA loan. Now, every lender is going to have their own overlays and stipulations, but the VA has the loosest guidelines out there. The funding fee, it comes out to like the 2.6% your first use. It comes out, or 2.3, it comes out to like $11 for every 100,000 borrowed, which is absolutely peanuts if you compare it to mortgage insurance premium and PMI that you would pay with an FHA or a 5% down conventional. If you compare those apples to apples, the funding fee is absolutely nothing comparatively. And it's definitely, in my opinion, better than having to put 20% down and saving $11 on every 100,000 you borrowed. Like, I would rather keep 20 grand in my bank account than put 20,000 down on a house to save $11 a month. I mean, I don't necessarily know how many years it takes to recoup $11 a month against 20 grand, but I'm sure it's probably more than the 30 that you're going to pay on that house. So,
Yeah, definitely. I think from my understanding, it's the VA that's backing a lot of these VA loans. So that's why
yeah, they
people
guarantee the
have
25%.
confidence that it's going to close because the VA is backing all these VA loans. I believe up to 25%, if I'm
Yeah,
not
they
mistaken.
guarantee the 25% of the note, which is why banks are more lenient with it, because the VA has very minimal guidelines, but then they feel really comfortable kind of stretching on that because their risk is so mitigated with, instead of it'd be the same as putting 25% down, except it's the government guaranteeing the note. Like, you're good. So
Yeah, and maybe related to this, maybe you can talk a little bit more about something called the Certificate of Eligibility. I know sometimes when military personnel haven't gotten their COE, it can delay the process because there's probably things have to do to get the COE, and they might have to talk to their commanding officer or someone to get that. And there's probably paperwork that's involved in getting the COE. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
yeah, you basically need a letter that, certify, I forget exactly what the name of the letter is, but basically certifying that you actually do work there, right? So it's basically your commander saying, yep, this guy's here. But as far as the certificate of eligibility, you can go to va.gov and it walks you through it. The easiest thing I would tell you is this: if you're looking at using the VA loan and you're talking to a few lenders, if your lender's not willing or able to pull your COE, find another lender, because it's not that complicated and that's what they do for a living. So, they can walk you through it. But yeah, I mean, you go to the va.gov, there's like a form, and then you have to fill something out and get your commander to basically sign saying, yep, I'm this guy and I work here. And I mean, it's a pretty simple process. It just, as long as you meet the minimum requirement, like, which is different depending on what way you served in the military, but essentially 90 days on active duty orders will cover you for being eligible to buy a house. And then outside of just getting the certificate of eligibility, that really only plays a role after your first use. So like, it used to be up until January 1st of 2020, there was a limit for every zip code, no matter how many times you use the VA loan. That's still the case, except for your first time use. And then you can do a one-time restoration later, and all of that stuff gets complicated once you use the VA loan one time. But your first use, there's no longer a limit. I mean, I've seen a service member, so far the most I've ever seen an active duty guy buy is a $1.93 million duplex in Venice Beach, California, and he did that zero down because there's no limit to how much you can buy as long as you borrow, as long as you qualify for the loan. So the certificate of eligibility, the actual number doesn't matter on that first use. After that, then it comes into play. Well, how much was your first mortgage? How much is the second one? What's the zip code? And it gets complicated enough that after your first time use, I always tell people, like, just talk to your lender, because every single situation is going to be different based on how much you borrowed, what the zip code is, what you're looking to buy now. And, but it's still, I know a guy who's bought 4 houses with the VA loan. So it's
Right.
still pretty.
Yeah, it's good to know. It seems like after you purchase your first place, your eligibility amount goes down. The other thing that I was looking at earlier, I thought that was interesting, is kind of base allowance for housing. And based on my understanding, veterans, they can use, if they live on the economy or off base, they can use their BAH to help qualify for their mortgage. And it seems like that's another good benefit that people should know about. And obviously it varies, I'm sure, from location to location. I think around here, I saw the range based on your rank, probably, around 2,000, 2,500, depending on if you have dependents or without dependents, is for what I saw for Fort Belvoir, Andrews, the Pentagon, and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. BAH absolutely counts towards your income. So does if you buy a fourplex, 75% of the gross market rents for those other 3 units that you won't be occupying. Some lenders will tell you you need 2 years experience as a landlord. The easy runaround for that is just hire a property manager and say they have 2 years experience. I've not really seen a bank that won't accept that, because if you're hiring a professional landlord, I think it's safe to say that you're going to manage it properly. Yeah, BAH counts. And the beauty is if you do that and you buy a fourplex, you live in one and rent the other 3, and let's say your mortgage is $3,000 a month and all of your tenants pay $1,000 a month, so you break even on the mortgage and maybe you cover the utilities and the internet, and you're out $500 or $600 a month, you can pocket the difference on the BAH, which is awesome because you got to pay to live somewhere. Well, if you can eliminate that expense, then you can just save and invest all of that money you would have been paying to live somewhere. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious, based on your experience, Dave, maybe you can talk a little bit more about how you scaled. I'm sure you've PCS from one base to another before. Just for your people that are listening, what's your thoughts in terms of, I can understand that maybe some people are thinking, well, I might not stay here very long, so I don't want to buy. Maybe I'll just rent, or maybe I'll just live on base. So can you talk a little bit about that, kind of from your past experience and what you've heard in terms of those decisions, whether to buy or rent, and what happens when you do have to PCS somewhere else where you do get deployed, and how do you take advantage of these benefits as you're PCSing and to try to scale in your real estate investments from kind of one place to another?
yeah, I think the first thing, I absolutely hate the advice that you should buy a house at every duty station as a blanket
Yeah.
statement. And I think that the idea behind it is good, but the answer is not as easy as that, right? Because should I buy a house? Maybe. How are you buying? Where's the house located? Is it in a war zone, or is it in a gated community? And if it's in a gated community, can you afford the mortgage if it's vacant? Like there's a lot of things that play into that. So I personally am a huge advocate for the house hack because it mitigates your risk and allows you to learn how to be a landlord and everything else. And I think that in every market, there's a way to make the house hack make sense. Single families can be a little bit more complicated. It depends on how you buy it, right? If you're buying a really high-end gated community house with a pool that is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, cookie cutter house, and you have a wife and 2 kids and you're not able to rent any bedrooms out, then you just got to make sure that you're buying something you're either going to own for a long time, will cash flow when you rent it out when you move with it, or just understand that you're okay with the fact that you're going to be coming out of pocket on this bad boy when you move away. Because appreciation isn't the bet you should make on that house. But if you're buying a fourplex where you can live for almost free, then your risk is super mitigated. You can save a ton of money while you're doing it. You'll be able to cash flow when you move out, and it'll be something you can sell on the income valuation, and appreciation and everything is a little bit more likely to be managed. So it depends on how you buy. But yeah, you can totally buy at every duty station. If you buy a house and 6 months later you get orders and you PCS, like, well, you intended to occupy it, so you're not breaking the VA loan. You can use it again at your new duty station, depending on your remaining entitlement. And so theoretically, you could buy a house at every duty station. I mean, that guy who owns 4 houses with the VA loan, there were 4 different duty stations, all purchased when he PCS'd.
Yeah, and it sounds like what I'm hearing, Dave, also is that, if you do decide to buy in house hack, you should probably budget some percentage for the property manager to kind of help you manage that that property when you're not there.
Yeah, I don't do any of my own
factor that into kind of the equation in terms of for the investment. And you want to make sure that you're looking at kind of the price of the acquisition, but also kind of the amount of rent that you might be getting, and to make sure that you can try to be as cash flow positive as possible. So then in the case that you do have to PCS and get deployed somewhere or move to another base, that you can still keep that property.
I agree. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and that takes an interesting point, because in Northern Virginia, there is probably less duplex, triplex, and so forth here. I think it's definitely a challenge, not just for the military, but also for civilians as well. Is there's a lot of zoning where a lot of people want to have those nice single family neighborhoods. Now, in a lot of areas that are close to a metro or public transportation, they've started doing more smart growth where there's more density there. But there's less, I would say, places for sale versus apartments for rent. Now, interestingly enough, if you go into certain areas like Fairlington, which is close to the Pentagon, it's probably, I would say, about a mile from the Pentagon off of 395 in Shirlington. Interesting tidbit is that Fairlington apparently was military housing after World War II, I believe. And in the same case at the River House at Pentagon City, that was actually a military housing back in the days, which was a really big complex, which have been converted into apartments. So I think there's probably older properties that are in Northern Virginia that might be more suitable for house hacking, where they're duplexes, they have separate entrances, so you can live in one half and rent out the other half.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've observed in my time here in Northern Virginia. I thought originally I was going to be here for 1 year, and here I am, I think, since 2006. So
Jeez.
a little bit more than 1 year.
Oh.
I guess as a different aside, when I came to the DC area, I thought originally I was going to join the Foreign Service. So I was taking the Foreign Service exam and going through that whole process of taking the written and the oral exam and trying to get my background investigation cleared. So that was kind of one of the reasons why I came here. So it's been a great experience living here. And like I said, I really appreciate you coming on to the show today. And I would love to work with anyone that's in your group, or if you know of someone that's moving to Northern Virginia, feel free to have them give me a call. My number is 703-216-2692. And now that I'm an official member of your Military to Millionaire group, I can at least kind of be on there to see what type of questions people are asking.
Yeah.
Is there other ways that people can reach out to you besides the Facebook group or other groups that you're a part of? I know you do a podcast and you have a mastermind. Maybe you can talk about that as we kind of wrap up here.
Yeah, I mean, the mastermind is just kind of a paid community. It's not exorbitantly expensive by any means, but we wanted to have a community that was only service members and vets, that was a little bit more tight-knit with gals who are serious about real estate. So we made a little bit of a buy-in to make there be some skin in the game. And then, I mean, I'm on every platform as either Military Millionaire or from Military to Millionaire, but the easiest way to, if you want to talk to me directly, is to shoot me a message on Instagram at From Military to Millionaire.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I will definitely follow you on Instagram as well. So I think that's all I have for today. If you don't have anything else, I think it's been great having you here.
Yeah,
And
thanks for having me.
like you mentioned before, I hope you enjoy your vacation.
I'm excited.
And yeah, we'll be in touch. Well, thank you so much.
Sounds good, brother. Have a good day.
Yep, have a great day.